So your question is a powerful one. It's a very practical one. It's how does a church grow in diversity when we actually talk from the perspective of the people of diversity um, that are coming and are finding themselves in the minority, right? The question really speaks to what holds us together, or where do we find unity? And ultimately, unity could only be found around shared values. Okay? That's why when Paul talks about marriage, he's saying you got to be equally yoked. Okay? Ultimately, you guys have to be pointed in the same direction. Okay? So if you come in and say, well, there's not enough diversity, there's a way in which that could almost come from a similar consumeristic part of you as somebody else coming and saying, I like my style of music. I want it to appear to me a certain way, and if it doesn't, then I can't attach to it. Okay? It can. I'm not saying it does. So what would work? Well, if you come in and say, well, this church values becoming a multi-ethnic church, and they have diversity on staff and diversity on the worship team, diversity up front, and they're bridging into styles of music that speak to a diversity, and that's a value they have. It's also a value I have. We can join in that. You see what I'm saying? That's where somebody coming in could say, now that's where I find my point of connection, and so I can embrace this, unite with it for the long haul because of that value if it's truly authentic. Now, to a more practical point beyond that initial conversation, it's like, okay, now week to week, how do I live in this church? Well, you find the other people of color or the other people that are minorities, and you say, how have you found a way to live in this? What are the opportunities that exist for my kids that are a minority? Wow, there actually are a lot of minority kids in the children's ministry. Wow, I didn't know that. That's really cool. How can we connect? Is there something going on that way? You know, I'd love to get into a small group, but if there's another biracial family, whether it's biracial between parents and kids or in the marriage, if there's another biracial family, we'd love to maybe be in a small group with someone else who's biracial so that we can encourage one another or learn from one another. And so it's really, once you have that shared value, then it really becomes just practical questions of navigating things and using wisdom or outside counsel and input to just navigate it effectively as we together try to figure out how to make this work. Does that make sense? But it really comes about from having shared values on both sides of that, because if the minute church goes wrong is, no matter who it is, the mature believer or the immature, the majority culture or the minority culture, the person in leadership or the person sitting out there, anytime anyone comes into church with their individualism or their consumerism dominant, we're breaking it. We're breaking church. And it can come from any direction, find its way in any person. And so the very first thing that has to happen when we come, if we're going to find community, is that whoever we are, whichever direction, whatever color, whatever gender, is that we're coming in and saying, I'm looking to find Christ in the middle and unite with the people he would have me unite with. And that's going to necessarily mean that I have to sacrifice and serve to make this work. And if we start there, there's great hope for us. That's what I'm excited about.